Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopinanda Jaya Gopinanda Yashodanandana Vajajanandana Yashodanandana Vajajanandana Yamuna Tira Vandachari Yamuna Tira Vandachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 32, verses 9 to 13. Sarvastakeshavaloka Paramotsavanirvita Jahurviraha Jam Tapam Pragyam Prapya Yatajana Sarva all, Taha, those gopis, Keshava, of Lord Krishna, Aloka, by the sight, Parama, supreme, Utsava, of festivity, Nirvritaha, feeling joy, Jahu, they gave up, Virahajam, born of their separation, Tapam, the distress, Pragyam, a spiritually enlightened person, Prapya, achieving, Yata, as, Janaha, people in general. Translation: all the gopis enjoyed the greatest festivity when they saw their beloved Keshava again. They gave up the distress of separation, just as people in general forget their misery when they gain the association of a spiritually enlightened person. Text 10. Tabir viduta sokhabir bhagavan achuto vrta vyaro chatadikam tata purusha shaktibir yata. Encircled by the gopis, who are now relieved of all distress, Lord Achyuta, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, shone forth splendidly. My dear King, Krishna thus appeared like the Supersoul, encircled by his spiritual potencies. Purport: the gopis are Lord Krishna's internal potency, and therefore when they were relieved and happy again, the Lord shone forth even more brilliantly than before, and his transcendental bliss increased. Krishna loves the gopis with pure transcendental love, and they love him in the same pure way. The whole affair, conducted on the transcendental platform, is inconceivable to those bound in material existence. Tasam hadaya kalindya nirvisya pulinam vibhu vikashrat kunda mandhara surabhya nila satparam sarach chandram susondaha dvastha doshratam hashivam krishnaya hastatarala shita komalavalukam. The Almighty Lord then took the gopis with him to the bank of the Kalindi, who with the hands of her waves had scattered piles of soft sand upon the shore. In that auspicious place, the breeze bearing the fragrance of blooming kunda and mandara flowers attracted many bees, and the abundant rays of the autumn moon dispelled the darkness of night. Adharshanhalhada viduta hridridho manoratantam srutayo yatayayu svarutariye kucha kunkuman kuiter akik lipan ashanam atma bandhave. Their heartache vanquished by the ecstasy of seeing Krishna, the gopis, like the personified Vedas before them, felt their desires completely fulfilled. For their dear friend Krishna, they arranged a seat with their shawls, which were smeared with the kumkum powder from their breasts. Purport: in the 87th chapter of this canto, text 23, the Shrutis, or personified Vedas, pray as follows: Striya uragendra boga bujadanda vishaktatiyo vayam apite samasam samadrisho nigri saroja suda. These women fully absorb their minds in meditation on Lord Krishna's powerful arms, which are like the bodies of great serpents. We want to become just like the gopis and render service to his lotus feet. The Shrutis had seen Krishna during his appearance in the previous day of Brahma and had become full of the most intense desire to associate with him. Then in this kalpa, they became gopis. And since the Vedas are eternal in human society, the Shrutis in this kalpa also become full of desire for Krishna. And in the next kalpa will also become gopis. This information is given by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Please join me in praying to our acharyas, Guru and Krishna, to understand. Om Agyanatimirandasya Janhanjana Chalakaya Chakshuru Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Upagadam Mayam Tadadi Swapadandikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Parikamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jugapate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sudhe Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Om Vishnu Paraya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamine Tinamine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Vashtata Shatadine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shivasati Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. May my obeisances at all the feet of the assembled devotees, begging for your permission, your blessings to speak. And yesterday we had a one-day offsite retreat with the leadership team at Bhakti Center. And on the way back, we were going to have this epic discussion. And I said, I need to prepare for my Srimad Bhagavatam class. So we all read these verses together and discussed, and they helped me prepare for my Srimad Bhagavatam class. So thanks to them, this class is kind of all of our meditation. So starting with the first verse, verse 9, what stood out to me was that it actually wasn't the first time the gopis had seen Krishna. They were seeing Krishna again, and it was a festival. And it just made me think that every time we see Krishna, it should be a festival, not just the first time, but every single time we take darshan. I feel like I always say this in my class, but every time we take darshan of Radha Muralidhar, it should be a festival. Every time the gopis are never satiated in seeing Krishna, and actually their love increases eternally. That's how it works in the spiritual world, that the devotees' love increases for Krishna, and then Krishna's love increases for the devotees, and this just goes back and forth eternally, ever increasing love. And separation and union must go together. You can't experience separation if you haven't had union. It is described in the scriptures that the ecstasy of feeling separation is even higher than the ecstasy of union, although the ecstasy of union is obviously so high, because it brings out the intensity of love. When Radharani, when she is separated, it's like a madness. Like when the gopis are separated from Krishna, they start like acting out his pastimes and just completely, go mad. And when Radharani, when she is separated from Krishna, it brings her basically to the point of like death, because that love and longing is so intense. But when union comes, it is a relief from all of that so-called suffering, and the joy is so intense. This is Krishna's dance with his gopis, this dance of union and separation. And this union and separation is going on eternally in Radha and Krishna's pastimes. There's even something called separation in union, when Radharani is actually with Krishna, but then she starts to feel like she's separate from Krishna, even though she's right there with Krishna. So it's all just an increasing of the love. And in this verse, text 9, the last sentence is, people in general forget their misery when they gain the association of a spiritually enlightened being. Now, we're not on the level of understanding Radharani's union and separation, but what we can relate to is this, isn't it? And we hear so many stories of the feelings that people had when they first met Prabhupada, where they just felt like all of their suffering was abated, and they felt the presence of God through the presence of Prabhupada. And there's also many stories of like, people being like, oh, I have this big problem, I have to go see Prabhupada, tell Prabhupada my problem, Prabhupada will fix my problem. Then when they actually would go to see Prabhupada, Prabhupada would be like, so what is the difficulty? And they would completely forget what their problem was, because now, like when you're in your own mind and you're suffering in material existence, you think your problem is so big. But then when you're in the association of a pure devotee, there is no problems. And I was meditating on like what it feels like when a great personality comes here to Bhakti Center. And there's many different great personalities, and everyone becomes like the spiritual world. Like the first time that Radhanath Swami came back after COVID, it was like life force like entered into this building and entered into the hearts of all the devotees, and all of the devotees came together and were so excited, and it felt like the spiritual world, because this great personality had come. And it was like all of the suffering that people had experienced during COVID was just like abated, and people were brought back to life because they were in the presence of a great soul. And my friend shared yesterday their story of coming from a very restrictive religious background and never really feeling safe within a spiritual group of people. And even like different times meeting, even just meeting devotees like in different parts of the world, still never really felt like, okay, like this is it, like I feel safe here. But then the first time he met Radhanath Swami, all of those feelings of distress and a lack of safety went away, and he felt safe within a spiritual organization for the first time because of meeting this great soul. So why does this happen? It happens because a spiritually enlightened being is not affected by the material world and its suffering, and is living in the spiritual world even while still present in their material body. They have transcended and are connected to Krishna. So when we are in their presence, they connect us to the spiritual world. And then we also feel transcendental to the material world and its suffering. And this is by their mercy. But then what we have to do, sometimes there's a danger of, after receiving that mercy and those feelings from being in the association of a pure devotee. Obviously, if we have the opportunity to be in the association of a pure devotee, physical presence constantly, we should take that opportunity. But for most of us, those meetings occur and then separation occurs, and there can be a tendency to just have enthusiasm when the pure devotee is here, but that's a great danger in spiritual life. We have to take all of the mercy that we received, and then we have to apply it every day in our spiritual life and become even more and more enthusiastic every day in our spiritual practices, in our sadhana, in our seva. And we have to know that by reading Prabhupada's books, we're associating with Prabhupada. We have to read Prabhupada's books. We have to chant. We have to serve. We have to take that into our daily lives. And we can relate to that service in separation, right? Like the gopis are experiencing love and separation on a very high level, but we can relate to service and separation with our spiritual master and these great souls. And actually, I one time asked Radhana Swami, I felt so close to you when I was in India and you were in America, and now I'm sitting with you personally, but inevitably that separation will come again, what to do? And he said, you can feel closer to me in separation than you do sitting with me here right now. And I took that very seriously, that I can have that relationship through service. So it's through our service to Krishna that we feel his presence. So in verse 10, it's really showing that Krishna is never alone. He is always encircled by his devotees. And in this verse, he's encircled by the gopis. And it says that the gopis are the Lord's internal potency. So what is the internal potency? The internal potency is what manifests the spiritual world. It is divided into the potency for existence, the potency for knowledge, and the potency for pleasure. The potency for eternal existence manifests the spiritual planets and the bodies of all the inhabitants. So it gives shape to the unlimited variegatedness of the land, villages, forest, hills, and pastime places in the spiritual world. And the potency of knowledge manifests all the hopes, imagination, intelligence, and judgments devotees use to serve the Lord and exchange in never-ending relishable relationships with him. The arrangements for all the loving pastimes enacted by the Lord and his devotees are regulated by this potency. I'm reading from a Krishna.com article, by the way. The potencies for pleasure completely captivates Krishna himself. This energy is represented by Radha. Radha is the embodiment of highest love for Krishna. Love captivates Krishna's heart completely and gives everyone in the spiritual world the highest pleasure. So that's what the internal potency is. And the Sri Ishopanishad invocation describes the Lord as being the complete whole. It writes, Om Purnam Ada Purnamidam Purnat Purnam Udachate Purnasya Purnam Adaya Purnam Eva Vashishyate. The personality of Godhead is perfect and complete, and because he is completely perfect, all emanations from him, such as this phenomenal world, are perfectly equipped as complete wholes. Whatever is produced of the complete whole is also complete in itself. Because he is the complete whole, even though so many complete units emanate from him, he remains the complete balance. Yes. So even though he is the complete whole, he is made more whole and more beautiful when he is with his beloved devotees. That's what he wants, and that's what makes him happy. So how is he made really complete? I'm going to read from, it's very interesting, from the Krishna book, the beginning of the 32nd chapter, to describe how he is perfect and beautiful when he is surrounded by his different potencies. Prabhupada writes, when Lord Krishna finally reappeared, Among the assembled gopis, he looked very beautiful, just befitting a person with all kinds of opulences. In the Brahma Samhita, it is stated, Ananda Chinmaya Rasa Pratibhavitabi. Krishna alone is not particularly beautiful. What? But when his energy, especially his pleasure energy, represented by Radharani, expands, he looks very magnificent. So Radharani makes him beautiful. The Mayavadi conception of perfection and absolute truth without potency is due to insufficient knowledge. Actually, outside the exhibition of his different potencies, the absolute truth is not complete. Oh, so he's not complete without his potencies. Ananda Chinmaya Rasa means that his body is a transcendental form of eternal bliss and knowledge. Krishna is always surrounded by different potencies, and therefore he is perfect and beautiful. We understand from the Brahma Samhita and Skanda Purana that Krishna is always surrounded by many thousands of goddesses of fortune. The gopis are all goddesses of fortune, and Krishna took them hand in hand on the bank of the Yamuna. Wow. Whew. So amazing. So it is so beautiful how when his devotees, the gopis, become more happy and relieved of distress, Krishna became more beautiful. So Krishna is happy when his devotees are happy, and he becomes more happy. Krishna's life and soul is his devotees, but he wants his devotees to have the real happiness, which is loving him purely and unconditionally with no trace of pride, because that is real love and what will make them truly happy. So that is why he sometimes puts his devotees into difficulty and so-called suffering, because he is trying to teach them and purify them how to give up their pride and false ego and truly, purely love him. So we can know whenever we are put into difficulty in our lives that Krishna is just trying to teach us and purify us so we can come to the place of loving him purely. And it says in the purport that these pastimes are not conceivable to someone who is bound in material existence. Unfortunately, we are presently bound in material existence, so we have to qualify ourselves through sincere, regulated devotional service of hearing, chanting, and serving with humility and begging to be delivered from the bonds of material existence so we can conceive of this pastime. Text 11 to 12. Then Krishna takes the gopis to the bank of the Kalindi in the most beautiful atmosphere that had been enriched by the personality of Kalindi, since everything is a person in Vrindavan, and she's actually using her waves to put the soft sand on the shore. And in text 13, to become an associate of Krishna, one has to follow in the footsteps of the associates of Krishna and beg to become an associate of Krishna. The personified Vedas had seen Krishna and begged to become just like the gopis and render service to Krishna. And therefore, in the next kalpa, they became devotees. They had this intense desire. And yet, even though they had intense desire, it still took a kalpa before they became gopis. The personified Vedas in this kalpa, who will develop that intense desire, will become gopis in the next kalpa. So we have to develop this intense desire to serve Krishna. But we have to not think we're more advanced than we are. So we have to cultivate, and even the advanced devotees cultivate this same mood. What does it I was actually talking to my Shiksha Guru, Rukmini Walker, recently, and I was asking her about cultivating the mood of being the servant of the servant of the servant of Lord Chaitanya, and how can one do that and at the same time desire to serve Radharani? And her answer was that to serve Radharani means to be the servant of the servant of the servant. That is how we serve Radharani. So we can read these stories of the gopis and develop intense desire to follow in their footsteps. And how do we practically do that, in our daily lives? And the answer is to be the servant of the servant of the servant. My husband actually asked Radhanath Swami last time he was here about realizing our spiritual form and the spiritual world. And Radhanath Swami's answer was that we focus on being the servant of the servant of the servant in Lord Chaitanya's mission. And when Krishna is pleased by our sincere service and our sincere sadhana and our humility, by our chanting, by our hearing, by our serving, and by reading Prabhupada's books. He mentioned that. Reading Prabhupada's books, then Krishna reveals to us who we are. So we have to strictly follow the process Prabhupada gave. And the gopis felt all of their desires completely fulfilled when they were with Krishna. And what did they do when they felt their desires completely fulfilled? They served Krishna. They took their shawls and made a seating place for him. The devotee doesn't just stop and relish their feelings of ecstasy. They are always looking for how to serve Krishna. So that's what we need to be doing, always looking at how to serve Krishna. And really taking it seriously, this point of needing the association of a spiritually enlightened being. Recognizing and being humble to recognize that we're in the material world, and the only cure for our suffering is through the mercy of the pure devotees, our Guru, Prabhupada, and molding in our lives in such a way that every single day we are taking their shelter. And then we can practically have the experience, like I was sharing in verse 9, of all of our suffering going away. Because, like Ramananda Rai says, that there is no suffering except not being in the association of devotees. When we're in the association of devotees and we're cultivating that proper consciousness and we're feeling the shelter that Prabhupada gave, we can feel like we're in the spiritual world even while we're in the material world. You know, sometimes we think, oh, the spiritual world is so far away and I'll feel that when I get there. And I just have to like tolerate until I get there. But Radhaswami says that we can't go to the spiritual world until we've created the spiritual world here in the material world. And how do we do that? We do that by serving each other. Because you can't have love for God without love for each other, compassion for each other. And one thing we were discussing yesterday at the leadership team offsite, which was really beautiful, was that really the process of advancement in Krishna consciousness is completely related to our faith. That devotional service starts with faith, Shraddha, and then as you progress through the different stages of devotional service, it's all about the increase of that faith, the intensity of that faith. And we read a verse in the Bhagavad Gita yesterday. We were reading the 15th chapter. I'm just going to pull it up right now. That was so beautiful. It said, text 19, whoever knows me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead without doubting is the knower of everything. He therefore engages himself in full devotional service to me, O son of Bharata. And I was sharing that that this is the process, like the more faith that we have without doubts, the more we naturally engage ourselves in devotional service. But also the process to getting that faith and not having doubts is engaging ourselves in devotional service, the regulative practice of chanting, hearing, and serving. And that practice itself gives us the experiences of Krishna to give us faith. And then we did a beautiful exercise, which I highly encourage everyone to do with their devotee friends. Vasudev asked a really beautiful question. He said, how have you all in your life developed that faith and that knowing that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead? Like, how did you get that faith? And on the way home in the car, we all went around and we all shared the experiences in our personal lives that have given us that faith of knowing, you know, Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and this is my path. And I was so blown away by like what the devotees shared. It was so beautiful and so moving. And when we hear from, you know, sometimes Krishna gives us like really special experiences, and it's definitely pride to think like, oh, I've had like such special experiences. But it's very, when you hear other devotees' special experiences with Prabhupada, with Prabhupada and with Krishna, it, number one, it humbles you, seeing like Krishna does that for everyone, not just you. And number two, it really gives you your faith. So I highly recommend that everyone goes away from this class and maybe organizes a sangha with their devotee friends to go around and ask this question and hear from each other, because it will really give you a lot of faith in your Krishna consciousness. So we have 6 minutes left. I'll stop there to give time for discussion, questions, answers, complaints. Thank you for allowing me to speak on this extremely elevated topic. Does anyone like to say anything?
Yeah, Hare Krishna, we can only reflect what you've already said so nicely. Last night we were listening, Vaishya Shekhar was speaking about suffering and satisfaction. And we're hearing about how the gopis were, their suffering was alleviated in the presence of the Lord. And you explained that it wasn't just because he was the object of their enjoyment, but the object of their, the one who they wanted to show love to, that they were, that service brings satisfaction, but it, endeavoring for my own satisfaction, Prahlad Maharaj says, but as soon as we endeavor for our own satisfaction, we begin to suffer. It's interesting how those two are related. Service is satisfying because that's who we are, and Krishnas are the object of their love, and so therefore they are satisfied. And how that atmosphere of the spiritual world is invoked by the presence of the spiritual master, because he's elevated and emanating pure love for Krishna and pure love for us. He brings us to that level because in the material world, everybody's envious of each other. We're competing. I'm more beautiful. I'm smarter. I have more money. I'm more popular. I'm more whatever. I have prominent position. So there's a competitiveness, but that's dissipated when Krishna is in the center, and the spiritual master helps us to remind us that devotional service is what satisfies, and he's lifting us up to that level. It's a little something this year, repeating what we heard from Srila Prabhupada. Keshav, you want to say something?
It's a wonderful class that you gave. Excuse me, I have a bit of a cold this morning, but it was so elevated, and I don't know, I kind of in the very beginning stuck to that very almost basic thing that you said, and we say, absence makes the heart grow fonder, and there is a difference, right? We can have good relationships with people, and we can be happy in their presence and maybe not see them for months, but it's a different relationship when every moment separated from that person, from that personality, stings, that we feel every moment of that. And there's a difference, because we have that in the material world too, people that we see occasionally, and it's a wonderful experience, and the people that we want to be with all the time. So that really stuck with me. And always enjoy hearing my given name in scripture. A beautiful name.
Thank you.
Thank you. Always wonderful classes.
Thank you so much for the class. You mentioned sincere service. You should render, and you define sincere and how one can see, examine herself, himself. Is it his service sincere?
Thank you for asking that question. I feel unqualified to answer that question because I'm trying to learn myself what sincere service is. The definition of sincere in the dictionary is free from pretense or deceit, proceeding from genuine feelings. Of a person saying what they genuinely feel or believe, not dishonest or hypocritical. And it actually comes from, I believe, sincere, the root of the word is actually like, they used to have marble that would have like cracks in it. And if there was cracks in it and they like filled it in with material that wasn't marble, wax, it was not sincere marble. So sincere meant like without wax. And and so we have to look in our hearts and see what wax we have. Desire for pratishta, desire for prestige, desire for honor, desire for appreciation, all of the different anartas that are in our heart are affecting us and our motivation and intention in devotional service. And being sincere is no ulterior motive, that my only motive is the pleasure of Krishna, the pleasure of Krishna's devotees. And I'm motivated by that, and I act from that, not out of place from what can I get, but what can I give. And I also think that personally, sincere is our intention, but also combined with like the intensity of our practice, that we don't become complacent, but that we stay focused and attentive and absorbed. Like, what is sincere japa? To me, sincere japa is trying to live our lives without committing the 10 offenses. If we're sincere, we will try to live our lives without committing the 10 offenses and being attentive to the holy name when we chant. Sincere is being attentive when we do our service, being present when we do our service, not allowing our mind to be distracted by the past and the future, but living in the present and begging to be sincere. So for me personally, if I don't feel like I am sincere, I can beg for Krishna's mercy to become sincere. I think that you can't have sincerity without humility. And humility is just being honest that Krishna is great and we are insignificant, part and parcel of him. We're not bad. It's not having low self-esteem, but it's recognizing our position in relation with Krishna and serving from that place. Okay, the conch shell is being blown. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Champakalata. Wonderful class.
Adi Purusha Amaham Bhajami Govinda Adi Purusha Amaham Bhajami Govinda. Adipurusha Amaham Bhajami Govinda Adipurusha
Jai. Shri Shri Radha Mulidhar Ki Jai. Shri Gaura Chandra Ki Jai. Thank you, dear devotees. We can feel like a gopi in this world. Mike Prabhu, you feel like you're a gopi after this class? You have long hair. Yeah, get in there. Okay. Hare Krishna, everyone. Come again tomorrow.